Greetings and salutations. In this video, we're going to be looking at manipulating text inside the terminal. It's the beginning of a series of videos I'm going to call Linux Terminal Basics. Manipulating text, that is generating text, putting text in files, editing existing text in files, is probably the most important skill that you can have if you're going to be administering a Linux system, whether it be your home desktop or a bunch of servers in the cloud. It makes no difference. I'm going to show you a lot of weird different ways to generate text and stick it into files today. If you have been around this channel for a while, you'll know that some of this we've talked about before. If you're somebody who is very advanced at working in a terminal, you'll probably recognize a whole lot of it, but some of it might be new to you. If you are brand new to the channel, a recent subscriber, first of all, thank you. Please do hang around. Don't think that this is over your head. It's actually quite easy to do. And even if you don't completely understand what you see, it will come in handy later. We're going to assume here that you do have a little bit of knowledge of the terminal, that you know how to navigate, that you can run some commands. Maybe you've even edited some files in the terminal before using a text editor. That's perfectly all right. I'm going to show you how to do a lot of things without even touching a text editor. We're using Ubuntu 18.04 and Bash is our shell program, but what I'm going to show you should work regardless of distribution, and even if you are working on some strange system that's not running Bash for the main shell. First thing we need to do is make ourselves a new directory to play around in. We'll call it text. And let's jump right in there. Now this directory is going to be a little sad because it doesn't have any files in it. Let's grab some files from around the system to play with. And let's see, let's grab one that I'm going to talk about toward the end. That is in the work directory, in my home directory. And the home directory is abbreviated with the tilde there. And the name, we'll just grab .text because there's only one in there anyway. So we're using the star there. That is a wildcard. It means pretty much everything. That will become important in a little while here in the video. And where am I going to put that? Well, I want to put it in the present directory right here. So let's go ahead and just signify that with a dot. It means your present working directory. And it says you can't do that. Well, you know why? Because I forgot to put the command in. Thank you. Duh. I will be making stupid mistakes throughout the video. Feel free to point at the screen and laugh. That was just the first one, I'm sure. So let's make sure that our file came over, and there it is. Yes, it is. We need to grab another file, so I'm going to copy one from, let's see, I'm going to do, let's grab the bash rc file, which is a common file that people need to manipulate. And we're going to put it in this directory, but I'm going to give it a different name. Let's call it bashrc.txt. And that way it'll be all in the open and easy to see. So let's go ahead and copy that. Make sure that made it over here as well. By the way, I will be using the autofill quite a bit during this, which means that you can type part of a file name or the name of a program, and then you hit the tab key, and if it can find it, great. What it'll do is it'll fill that in for you. If not, it'll offer a list. If you tap the key again, if you don't get any output on the screen, you're wondering, tap it again. The system will offer to give you a list of files to choose from. Type in a little bit more text, you're good to go. Autofill is a very powerful tool. So let's see what we got in here. We got a couple of files, so we're good to go. So we got a place to work, and we got a couple of pre-existing text files that we can fool around with. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to copy a file. Now you may be saying, I already know how to do that. Why are you showing me? I'm showing you because if you're going to be manipulating files and changing them, then you definitely want to know how to make backups. So if you are working in someplace other than your own home directory, you will need to do this as the root administrator type person so that you have permission to write in directories around the system. So let's say, for instance, that we were working on fstab. So let's cd to that directory. Oh, actually, this is an opportunity for me to show you one of my favorite commands. Let's do pushd, pushd. We're going to go to etc. And pushd tells us that that's where we are and that we have our text directory is in the stack. And so now we're in here, and we're going to change ourselves over to being acting as the root user. So just type in sudo bash, give it your password, and if you have permission to do so, suddenly you are acting as the root user, which is signified there by that lovely little hashtag at the end, #, whatever you want to call it. We're acting as root. Now, when you do this, you got to be real careful, gang, and the reason why is because if you make a mistake, you could trash something in the system. But I'm showing you this because it's an important skill to have. So let's say that we were going to be doing something with the fstab file. Let's just take a look at that. I'm going to use less to read fstab. Fstab is the file in the system that has the information about where your partitions, mounted stuff is concerned, so your swap file and all that. Sometimes you have to edit that if you want to add a hard drive or something like that. Well, we want to make a backup before we start messing with it. So we'll just do cp fstab. We're going to put it in fstab again, but we're going to add the extension back. You get no output, it did it right. But if we ls we've got those two files. So you want to make sure that before you start goofing around with anything on the system that you make a backup of it, because you might mess it up. So there you go. Now, if you do what I do in this video and you end up trashing system, so if you're trashing your system, it's your fault. Just want to make sure we put that right up front. So now we get to use one of my favorite programs. When I typed exit, by the way, it put me back to being regular old me, just good old Joe and not the root user. We're going to use popd to get back to our directory. And you're saying, well, why didn't you just cd back and forth? Well, that's not exactly the same. It works a little bit different. It's one of my favorite commands in Linux. It's one of the first things I learned many years ago was how to do that. It's great in scripts because the good thing about pushd and popd, you can jump around the system and it will always go back to where you were in order, but you don't need to know where that is. So you can start it from any directory. So if you're like running a program and you're in some weird directory on the system, that's your present working directory, pwd, then guess what? It will put you right back there. It's a very cool command. So anyway, we're ready to actually get into talking about some of the really cool stuff that we can do with text. So I'm clearing the screen with Control L. If that doesn't work in your terminal, then you can just type in clear, like so. So the first command we're going to talk about is echo. Echo generates text, and it sends it somewhere. Now, when you just execute it like this, it just throws it up on the screen. A lot of times when you see the echo command being used, you see it with a little bit of a different syntax. You'll see that the text is surrounded by quotes. Now there's a reason for that. When you are sending a command to the shell, which is what we're running here, bash in a terminal, the bash shell, certain characters are interpreted certain ways. So let's say, for instance, that I issued that same command. By the way, I'm using the up arrow to get to commands I've already typed in before. That's using the history. Let's say that I stuck the glob or the star or the asterisk on the end there, right? Well, watch what it does. Well, wait a minute, it echoed my text and then it listed everything that was in the directory. That's because whenever you send the shell, the glob, it tries to expand it into whatever's going on in the environment at that moment. Basically, that is the shortcut for, oh, you mean everything, right? So that's why it does that. Well, we don't want it to do that. So let's do our hello world within the quotes. Now, let's add the glob, and we'll put that in a quote. Oh, that works out good. So it's a good idea to put your text inside quotes. Most of the time, that'll catch those special characters, and instead of it doing something unpredictable, that's what it'll do. So echo basically takes stuff from standard in, which when you first log into a terminal, standard in is hooked into the keyboard, and then it takes it and puts it on the screen, which is where standard out is connected. And that's how Linux works. It takes stuff from standard in, it does something with it, and sends it to standard out. We can redirect that. We can put that in a file. So let's say that we wanted to create a file, and in our file we wanted hello world. Well, let's start from scratch. Let's do it this way. Let's do echo, and we'll say this is line 1, right? And we're going to direct that into a file using that character right there. The arrow points toward the file name. We'll call it file 1. So we should have one line in that file. Let's go ahead and do that again. This time we're going to change this to a 2, and I'm going to add another arrow. When we have 2 arrows there, that tells the system, okay, I want you to append to the end of the file with whatever output from the whatever's in front of it. It just grabs the output from whatever command is in front of it, program, whatever, and throws it in a file. So it looks like this. So now, if we take a look at that file, we're using less to read the file. No, we don't want to type the whole thing before you hit enter. It helps. Type the file name. That helps too. You see that with the less reader here, that we see this is line 1, this is line 2. So that's been accomplished. And that is basically how you can use echo to put lines in a file. And you can append to the end of a file. And that becomes real important when you're editing certain things like configuration files, or maybe even a script that you're working on or whatever, and you think, oh, I need to add that to the end. Well, instead of opening up an editor and going through all that stuff, we can just throw that text in there real easy. There is another way to do that as well, and that is using the cat command. Now, the cat command can be used to read files. So if I cat file 1, like so, you see it just prints the output on the screen. Cat has some pretty extraordinarily superpowers, though. We're going to show you those right now. So the first thing is we're going to use cat as a text creator. I'm not going to call it a text editor because we really can't do it. And we're going to cat into a file called file 2. And you notice it just sits there and waits for input from us. We've got a blinking cursor on the screen. So if I type in this is line 3, enter, like so. And then I use Control D. The Control D tells the cat command, I don't have any more input for you, go ahead and finish what you're doing. And it has created a file called file 2. So let's clear the screen here. Do that one more time. See, we now have file 1 and file 2. The cat command gets its name from the word concatenate, which means to bring a lot of stuff together and put it together in some sort of logical order. And what cat can do is work with more than one file. So let's do cat file 1, right? And then we're going to also feed it file 2. Let's see what happens. Well, look, it put all those text together. All the text that was in those 2 files, it listed one right after the other. Pretty simplistic, but actually very powerful, because that means we can pull a bunch of information from different places together and then spit it out in another place if we want to. So there's no limit to how much you can put into a file using cat. Let's do the same thing once again. And this time we're going to take that output and I'm going to put it in another file called file 3. Just like so. So there's our file 3. And then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to cat into file 3. Let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's do it this way. So I've created file 3, which is all of the text that is in file 1 and 2. But this time I want to append. So we're going to append now. Like so. All right. So now it asks for text. Give it D, tell it that you're done. And now let us use cat to read file 3. So I think at this point you get the idea. You can use it to create files, you can use it to append files, you can use it to grab all the text out of one file and stick it in another file. Cat is really, really useful. So the next thing that we want to look at now is a kind of a interesting little thing that cat will do, and it's a good way of explaining to somebody how standard in and standard out work on the computer. So let's clear the screen, and then I'm going to type in cat, and I'm not going to give it any argument at all. I'm not going to give it a file name. I'm not going to give it nothing. And you notice we've just got blinking text. So if I type in hi and then press enter, it just puts it back out on the screen. So it takes standard in and throws it to standard out. And I can do this all day. No matter what I put in here, it's going to do it until I use Control-C to kill the cat command. So now you get an idea of exactly how that works. And you can take huge chunks of text and copy it into cat. You can create files with it. It's unbelievable what you can do. Just have fun with it. Do be careful though, because if you get this confused with this, you can blow out an entire file. So before you start messing around with things, make a backup copy. That'll keep you out of trouble. So now we have used Echo and we've used cat to create files, and we're looking at reading files with cat. That's fine, not a problem. The problem with cat as a file reader, though, is this. If I want to look at our bashrc file we copied in to play with, it just rolls right off the screen. It goes to the end and it dumps me at a command prompt. Now I can scroll up using my mouse because this is a terminal emulator, but that's kind of a bit of a pain. So what we can do is you can cat a file or a bunch of files into another program called more. Now I know we've already looked at less, but I want to cover more before I cover less because less is actually more than more. Make sense? Here we go. So we're going to throw this into a program called more. Oh, well, I forgot to give it the file name. Let's get out of that and try that one more time. So we want to cat bashrc into more. No such file or directory. Oh. Duh. There you go. We'll get it right. See? Now, the more command is a pager. If you use the enter key, it moves you up one line at a time. If you use the space bar, it moves you up a page at a time. And when you get down to the end of the file, it just dumps you right back out to your prompt. And that's pretty much all more does. It's a very simple pager. A lot of people use it within scripts, though, these days. That's one of the main uses of it. If you just need something really simple, it'll get the job done. But most systems these days come with a more advanced pager called less. And this is the one that you use when you type in man, the command name, and use the man command to get a manual. It throws it into less. So let's do that this time. Let's cat bashrc into less. And let's go ahead and put two files in here because you probably think it looks kind of stupid that I'm only using one file. Let's use the cat command the way it should be. So let's go ahead and do that. And now we get less, and we can use the page up and down keys to manipulate the system and move up and down. We can use the space bar to move around. We can use the up and down arrow keys. We can also search for text. That's possible within less. So if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, you notice now our concatenated file is showing up because we threw it into less. And down here at the very bottom of the screen, we're getting those lines. But less doesn't automatically dump us back to the command line, so it makes a really good reader. You can use it for anything. It kind of cuts through stuff that way. To get out of less, once you're done reading, just hit the Q, and it puts you back at the text. So that is the difference between less and more. And less can be executed this way. So if we just want to look at file 3 with less, then we use the less command. You've already seen me do this once in this video, no big deal. So there's less. And less basically, if it has less text than fills the screen, it throws it to the bottom like so. And that's it. So Q to get out puts you where you were. So that's less. So now that we have some idea how to read files, how to navigate the system, how to cat them, how to throw them into files, let's talk a little bit about working with your text editor and how you can do things around the system and make things work. So the basic text editor that ships with Ubuntu and most distributions of Linux is called VI or Vim. I'm not covering that because that one is a really difficult one to learn for most people. My preferred text editor is Nano. I think it's a little bit more straightforward. So we're talking about Nano. I do have somewhere on my channel, Jeremy O'Connell did a really good video about working with VI. And if you want to learn, you can go look at that video. But I use Nano, and I teach people how to use Nano because it's just so easy. So if you just type in Nano, then you get a blank page, and you can start typing text in there. And then we'll go ahead and save that, and we'll give it a file name, and we'll call it nano.out.txt, just so we have something to play with. And I have to put in nan. Let's put nano so it makes sense. So there we go. And that's it. You can fire Nano off with a file name, and then it will go open the file that you're looking for. So let's look at file 3 again. And there's our file. We can add in here. If we don't touch anything right now, it's pretty cool. It says it's read 5 lines. If I type something in here and I want to save it, if I want to exit, it'll go, whoa, do you want to save this? And you can say yes or no. I'm going to say no, I don't care, I just want out. So feel free to play around with Nano. It's very powerful. If you use Nano to open up a file somewhere on the system where you don't have root privileges to write to it, it'll still let you read it as long as the permissions on the file are set to let you do that. So let's look at our fstab file that we looked at earlier. And if I hit the T, there we go, thank you, yay. So now it comes in here and it shows us the file, but then down here it says, hey, the file is unwritable. I can't change it, but I can look at it. Now, one of the things about Nano, it's a little weird and it takes people a little while to get used to, is you see here these really long lines in this configuration file. Well, they just drop right off the end of the screen there, and then you see that $sign. Well, if you put your cursor over top of that $sign, it shows you the rest of the line, like so. That's how that works. So when you're done, you can just get out, and you're done with that. If you did want to change something in the fstab file, you wanted to be able to write to it, then just use sudo in front of that, like so. And it's going to ask me for a password. Now I can write to this file if I want to. No, I don't want to, so I'm just going to exit right out. So another thing that you may find is that when you're doing all of this echoing and you're doing all of this sending with cat, is that you can't do it with sudo command. You can't do sudo echo. In that case, become the root user, and then you can do that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's use echo to add a line to let's see, and we're going to append that to etc fstab old, or dot back. We'll do the not old. You can call it old or back either way. Sometimes I call them old. Whatever you want to do. So we're going to append that here, like so. And now if let's do less dot back, you'll see that I added that to the end of that. So do be careful with that, though. That's a kind of a dangerous command. So exit with the letter C, or rather with Q, not with C, and you're out of less. By the way, there's all kinds of text finding things that you can do in less as well. While you are here as the administrator, you can also remove So that's one of the reasons you got to be careful when you're running as root, because it didn't ask me did I really want to do that. It just did it, and that's a system file. So there you go. So that is the basics of how to use Nano and manipulate the system. Now, what about graphical text editors? What if you're working at a terminal and you want to use a graphic text editor? Well, you still can. It's no problem at all. Whatever distribution you're on, you probably have one. I'm on Ubuntu with GNOME, so I'm using the GEdit editor. And if I want to call it from a terminal, that's not an issue. Just GEdit, and then I can give it whatever file I want it to look at. And it opens right up. As long as you have access to a graphical desktop, it'll work just fine. But notice something here. I can't really do anything in the terminal. I don't get a prompt. It's like, what's going on? Well, that's because the way I started that with just GEdit all by itself, it's taking over the entire terminal. It's the main process in the foreground. But Linux, even in a terminal, is a multi-tasking system. So in order to do that, let's do it this way. I add an ampersand on the end. It puts it in the background. Watch. Now I can work on my terminal. It tells me that I have a job running. It's job 1. And I can still play around, and I can still be editing my file over here with the text editor if I want to. And then I can go around. I can go in here. If I have a bunch of stuff running like that, type in jobs. It'll tell me what I have running, and it'll tell me that it is running. So that's pretty cool. When I'm done with GEdit, I can just go ahead and close it. And it closes up. And if I type jobs again, it tells me that I had a job, but it's done now. It's quit. So pretty cool, huh? So you can have that open, and you can also do that as root. You can do the same thing. So let's just switch over to being root. So let's do, first we become root, and now we are going to open up GEdit. Now let's get down here. Oh, that's right. Your history is going to be as root, so it's a little bit different. So watch. We need to type that back in. And then I can go into, let's see, just do it. Put it in the background once again. Okay, so now anything that I do, I'm doing as root. So if I wanted to save a file and create it, I can do it anywhere in the file system. I don't have to, I can do it just anywhere. And it will let me. So let's go ahead and close this. Close without saving. Exit. Okay, so now you've got some idea of how to play around with those sorts of things. Let's talk about file permissions real quick before we wrap this up, because it becomes very important. If we write a very quick script, let's do that so we have something to play with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cat. I'm going to put it into a file called my script, like so. And the first line for any script has to be telling the system what language you're using to do it. We need to start with a shebang. So we start with hashtag. Okay, that's the first line. And then we're going to put in our echo command, our hello world. And that's it. We have to go back here. Well, see, I have to backspace. I can't use the arrow to fix my typo. So there is our script. It's a little 2-line script. That's all there is. Nothing else in there. So Control D. Well, if we want to run our script, we're going to have to turn it into an executable program. We have to do that. And right now, if we tried to run it, if I did that, I'll make sure it's in here. Yes. Okay, so let's see. Let's do this real quick. Yeah, it's there. So in order to run a script, we would need to tell it what directory it's in. Well, it says permission denied. The reason why is because this script is not executable. It doesn't. The system doesn't know that this can be treated as a program, so we have to change that. And we're going to do that by changing the file permissions. So let's take a real quick look at that file that I have in here called file permissions, so we can talk a little bit about it. So file permissions on a file, they determine whether a file can be read, written to, or executed. Reading a file, that's pretty obvious. Writing to it, that's obvious as well. Execute it might not be. That means that we're going to treat this as a program. So if I jump out of here real quick, jump out of less, and then we do ls, and we show everything, you notice that the file permissions on our my script here, this file right there, it just says read write and then read read. Well, we need to change that. There is a couple of ways that we can do that. The first one is we can do it octally, which is my favorite, which means that if you want something to be readable, it equals 4. If you want it to be writable, it equals 2. And if you want it to be executable, it equals 1. So we can just type those permissions directly in by using the change mod command. There's a couple of examples here. So if we want to change this file to be writable, or rather executable, then what we would do is we would use change mod, and we'd say 755, which would set those bits directly using the octal thing there, and it would set our permissions. The other way that we can do it is change mod X, just like that, and that will add that file permission to it. So let's do it both ways here. Let's go ahead and get out of here very quickly. And so this is my go-to way of doing it. We're going to add the permissions that we want, and we're going to do it to my script, and there you go. So now if I ls again, why look, we have added those to that. Isn't that interesting? Now there's another way to do this, and that is that we can run this command where we say, let's go ahead and clear the screen. Let's do change mod once again, chmod. And then we will do plus, and then the letter X, and then we'll give it the name of our file. We'll call it my script. Well, you notice it just took that with no problem. What that will do is it'll also set that execute bit on all the permissions on the file. So let's have a little fun with that real quick. Show you how that works. So let's do minus. Now, look, we're back to not being executable. So let's run that again, and then that one. Now it's executable. 2 ways to do it. So there you go. That's how to read text files, write text files, generate text, move text around, do all kinds of crazy stuff. You can see that you don't even have to open an editor to create basic text files or append to existing files. Very cool. I hope you enjoyed the video. Your feedback is always welcome. Be sure to check out Easy Linux on the web at EzeeLinux.com. While you're there, you can follow the links to EzeeTalk, which is our very own forum. We control that from the operating system on down. It does not rely on any big corporations, big services that they can take away from us or change anytime they want to. We actually control that ourselves, which makes it secure, and we have lots of moderators that make it fun because we don't let people be nasty in there. Also, if you're a Facebook user, be sure and give it a like on Facebook. Talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for watching.